You're listening to the Cars of Carlisle Network, podcast episode number 111, featuring John Hammer, Dodge spokesperson and performance driver.
Cars of Carlisle is your favorite internationally downloaded podcast about all things automotive. Darren and his CFC team are ever searching for interesting automotive happenings, real stories about real car people, and fun features to inform and entertain you. Each week, the Cars of Carlisle crew brings you show topics ranging from car shows to team adventures to auto racing weekends to behind-the-scenes human interest stories from car nuts that live across town, across the country, or even across the globe. Come join the road trip.
Today, join us in speaking with professional automotive broadcaster John Hammer. In addition to being a facilitator, radio podcast host, writer, and precision driver, John is a modern-day Mopar expert. For 14 years, Mr. Hammer has worked as a Dodge spokesperson, sharing his vast knowledge with fans everywhere. Additionally, John knows how to get around a track. Raised in Detroit, John has been a drifter, autocross racer, as well as a road course race car driver. Climb over the roll cage and listen in. He has some stories you're going to enjoy. It's time to get out of Dodge and travel down to Charlotte, North Carolina to talk all things Dodge. So, let's get revved up.
Hello and welcome back, Tubers, to your favorite informative automotive podcast. I am your trusted host, Darren. This is episode 111, and in it, we're going to spend some time with John Hammer. He's an automotive event host and MC, a media specialist, a Mopar scholar, and a guy who can drive a car around most any track. So I'm hoping to meet up with John at the next Carlisle Chrysler National Show, and I can't wait for you to meet him and hear some of the great tales he has to say. And it's a really good point now to say thanks to my friends at Carlisle Events for always supporting and being behind this show, and for making the introduction to John too. I really appreciate that. Thanks to Mike Garland. And along those same lines, I would like to extend my gratitude to the management team at Porsche Mechanicsburg. Looking forward to the chance to work together with them, perhaps later again this year when things settle down in the world. All right, gang, it is trivia time. Being that this is a Mopar-centric show, let's go with this. What were the full names of the legendary Dodge brothers? We'll have that answer at the end of the show. So for now, let's hop in, travel virtually to Charlotte, North Carolina, and speak with John Hammer. Hello, Cubers. This is Darren, and I am on the phone tonight with John Hammer. John, thanks so much for being part of the show, and I know that you are a TV and radio personality and of the past, and you now, of course, have your own podcast show and everything. So welcome, fellow car guy. What can you say? I mean, we have a passion for all things four-wheeled.
Well, I'll tell you, honestly, Darren, it's a thrill to be here, man. I really appreciate that. It's pretty cool to hang out. Anytime you get a chance to hang out with other car guys and ladies, please don't get mad at me. I'll use that generic air quote term, car people, enthusiasts, whatever. But it's cool. Yeah, like you said, I am born and raised in Detroit. I'm a long-time East Side of the Motor City kind of kid. Okay. My dad was an automotive designer, an engineer. Much to his dismay, I failed algebra, and so I did not have a career ahead of me in doing anything that had anything to do with engineering. But I got into broadcasting as a profession, but cars were always my hobby. I almost don't want to admit to this. Like my very first car ever was a 1981 Dodge Aries K car. It's a terrible car. But then I went on to own other brilliant winners like at a couple of Corvairs.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah.
You've redeemed yourself, thankfully, in recent years.
Well, yeah, I've done all right. In recent years, I've had other cool things. I've been blessed. I owned a Viper for a while. That I have to admit, the Viper is that's the one that got away. I never should have sold that car. I'm an idiot.
Yours?
I'm truly an idiot.
Was it first gen?
I'm sorry.
First generation, second gen. What?
It was a Gen 2 GTS. It was a 2001 GTS. It was a sapphire blue, silver stripes, and the cognac interior, like that baseball glove brown leather interior. Yeah. One of only 55 ever built in that combination.
That's sexy.
And it was super sexy, man. I've got pictures up on Instagram if you ever want to go back and see what a fool I was to get rid of it. It's just gorgeous car. And, you know, it was just one of those things where the day it was delivered, and it was great because I bought it from a dealership in Omaha, Nebraska, outside of Omaha.
Okay.
And they actually delivered it, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina these days. So they delivered it to me, and the guy pulls up to my house, and it's late evening. It's like 8 o'clock at night, and he backs the trailer down my driveway, and he opens the door, and he's a bigger guy, and he had to kind of climb in through the window to get inside the car. And, you know, my family's down there in the garage with me, and he hits the key on this thing, and it's the loudest. I mean, it's so loud, and burble, 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 burble. And I remember looking over at my child, and my kid laughs. He's like, "This is the coolest thing ever, Dad." Great, Dad. So yeah, some people then ask, well, why did you sell it?
Right.
And it's because some fool offered me $10,000 more than I paid for it. And I'm like, yeah. Of course I'll take it. And I sold it, I don't know, 4 years ago, probably now. Mm-hmm. Now I couldn't buy it back for that $10,000 plus another $5,000 probably.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I truly do.
Yeah, they're really value. Yeah.
And that, if I'm not mistaken, that's where it had the 2 helmet bumps on the roof line, right?
It sure was. Yeah, it had the double bubble roof on it. And to me, you see, he was like, when it came to buying the car, I've worked for, just so folks listening know, I have been blessed for the last, 14 years, to work as a spokesperson for Dodge at a number of events. In fact, in Carlisle, obviously, where a lot of folks know me there. But when it came time to buy a Viper, and I'd known that I'd wanted one for many years, I could have afforded a newer Viper. I could have afforded a Gen 3, or perhaps even a really beat-up Gen 4 if I'd found one. But to me, the Gen 2 GTS was, and of course this is before the Gen 5 came out, was just the epitome of in my brain what a Viper would be. Yeah. And if I wanted a Viper in my garage, that was the car, that was the shape that I wanted to caress with my hands as I washed it, you know?
That's so true. That is so true. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Well, you certainly had you had the 6-speed?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Every Viper ever built has always been a 6-speed.
Right. I guess right.
If you've ever seen one, a couple of folks have made some conversions for drag racing. There was one guy that I met one time who actually did just the most bastardized thing you could possibly do to a Viper. He put a Chevy Power Glide in the thing.
Oh,
God. It was fast. It was really fast, but yeah.
Well, let's talk. You hit on something there that I want to maybe do a little mining on, and that is just as a spokesperson for Dodge. Obviously, I'm a Carlisle native, Carlisle resident. You come to Chrysler Nationals and things, but talk a little bit about the preparation, what goes into how, because you really, truly have to know your products inside and out. Talk a little about that process and what goes into that.
Well, let me throw it to you this way. So my wife will look at me, and every now and then I'll spew out some statistic, right? Mm-hmm. Just in passing. We'll sit at dinner, we'll be watching TV, and I pull something out. And she looks at me and she rolls her eyes at me and she says, "Your brain is full of the most useless car knowledge."
Thank you very much.
I know. Like, well, hang on. Not really, lady, because it's paying the mortgage to put a roof over your head, you know? But, I love coming to events like Carlisle because I have to have my A game on.
Yes.
Because you don't know who you're going to meet. You're right. I mean, you might, and everybody looks the same there, right? I mean, we're all sweating our you-know-what's off because when we go, at that time later in the summer, it's always hot as Hades. It's 100% humidity. We're always, soaking wet.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. You might be talking with an executive from FCA. You might be talking to somebody who just bought his first ever Mopar. But the truth of the matter is that you can't BS any of those people. Mm-hmm. You either know it or you don't, and you can pretty quickly figure out who's for real and who's not.
Well, and I have to play very neutral because my podcast really covers the full gamut, and I had a little bit of a failed quiz there with questioning myself about anything other than a 6-speed tranny and a Viper. So I show some of my
right.
But
it's all right. When I got my Viper, it's amazing how often somebody will come up to you and go, yeah. My buddy had one. What engine? It's a V10. Oh yeah. My buddy just had the V8 one. And you're just like,
no such thing. Now that no,
right? You roll your eye.
Yeah.
So,
but I can tell you though that there's something special about the Mopar family because, and it is no disrespect to General Motors fans, Ford fans, and I actually enjoy the personality of each of the shows at Carlisle events, and very different, almost different aura at each of the shows, but. To your last point, though, Mopar fans, those that are restoring a Savoy or it could be anything. I mean, an Imperial. You going back 50, 60 years. Those guys truly know their stuff. Ed Bizeski comes to mind. He is a walking encyclopedia, and
100%.
You cannot get anything past someone like that. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, it's one of those deals where I've described it this way in the past, and I never want to, I don't want to insult anybody, but the idea here is that, it's like we, the Mopar folks are kind of like the red-headed stepchildren of the car world. Anybody can be a bow tie fan. There are a gazillion blue oval guys, but you've got to be a special kind of knucklehead to want to get into Mopar. Parts are harder to find. Mm-hmm. People don't have the respect on the street as such. Now, in recent years, we've been very, very lucky. We've got a fair amount of television that's really brought that end of the hobby into our world. Mark
Sure.
Warman and the Graveyard Car Show has helped quite a bit.
Much, yeah.
Chris Jacobs has become a very good friend of mine over the years. Chris is he's on Overhauling and he does lots of different shows. He is a humongous Mopar guy. So things like that have certainly helped. But still, at the end of the day, you can argue whether Ford or Chevy are number one in that world, and then we're down there at number 3. But that's okay. We don't mind that. We wear that as a badge of honor.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of pride in that. I can sense that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No, absolutely. But you pointed out. Things like you mentioned somebody with a Savoy. I was talking with a guy the other day about a Dodge Coronet Crestwood. In the early 70s, that was the full-size station wagon. But here's the crazy thing. You could actually get one of those things with a 400 cubic inch V8 and a freaking 4-speed manual transmission in a full-size station wagon, right? It's like, that's so ridiculous that I want one.
Exactly. Because the grocery bags are going to come flying out the back when you get on it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, now I have to admit, we're recording this on a Wednesday, and I made a post earlier today. It's hashtag Wagon Wednesday. I'm a wagon nerd. I love station wagons. One of my favorite cars that we used to do that we had on if you've ever seen our Dodge Thrill Ride show over at Carlisle,
absolutely,
we drift to college. Back when we had the Magnum SRT,
yep.
That was a big Hemi-powered 425 horsepower station wagon, and we would drift them. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
So I would love to get my grubby hands on one of those things, but at the same time, that we don't make those anymore. A modern day kind of, idea, again, of, going back to that crazy Dodge Crestwood, has to be a Cadillac CTS-V wagon with a 6-speed manual.
Mm-hmm.
It's a holy grail of coolness. And I would, you can't touch one of those things anymore for reasonable money because everybody who has one, they now know what they have.
That's right.
And if they're going to, there's going to be big cash.
That's right. It's sort of like,
yeah.
And I know I'm crossing the line here, the DMZ line into bow type country, but it's sort of like the modern day Nomad in a way.
No, totally, 100%, man. I'm not going to beat you up on that. I'm the guy that just brought up a Cadillac. That's all good.
Yeah, but that is very cool. You talking about the Magnum? Maybe I'm jumping around here, but I remember the Dodge ad that had, wasn't it like pulls up to a light or something? And somebody says, "What do you got in that thing?" And he's like, "Well, I've got a guitar, an amp, and all the things in the back of it." So it's
yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
really
completely
clever marketing.
Sure. What really made that car fun was that it did have a little bit of extra weight over the rear end.
Okay.
And so that made it really good for drag racing. It was all because of the glass, really, over the rear end. So it just shifted the weight transfer just a little bit to the back, and it made it great for drag racing because you had a little more grip, a little better weight transfer. It was a great drift car because once you got the thing out, it would hang the rear end out because it had the weight out there, pendulum out. It was a lot of fun. And then, okay, so here's some Dodge Magnum minutia, right? Again, this is the stuff that
your wife will be so proud of you.
Right, you got to talk about the stuff that gets people. Is that in 2008 was the last year for the Magnum SRT. In 2008, it got a brand new front end that looked a lot more like the refreshed Dodge Charger. Had a new a scoop on the hood, whole new front fascia. It was very different, and it was only that year. So in that year, they only made a handful of the SRT8 versions anyway. However, the one that you really care about is the 2008 Magnum SRT8 in steel blue. There were only 29 of them ever made.
Wow. And
it is an extremely rare car. Very, very cool to see any of those cars ever pop up. But if you ever find any 2008 SRT, buy the car because it's awesome. But if you can get your hands on a steel blue one,
nice.
That's holy grail.
Nice. Well, there's a pro tip to all listeners right there. Everybody's going to be out scanning and trying to see what they
For
can
sure.
find. Well, you have if we can, let's stay on talking about Carlisle. Obviously, you go to all kinds of events. You host and MC events all over. What is, in your mind, special about just about Carlisle and the Chrysler National Show?
You know what I like about it? It's the size.
Okay.
It's just humongous. And that's you can argue that's good or bad. I mean, luckily it's a multi-day event, which helps a ton because you need that time to go around there. I mean, it's kind of like going to you go to SEMA. And I know Joe Average can't get into SEMA, but SEMA is one of those shows where it's just so physically large that you're going to walk miles and miles, and you can't do it in one day.
Sure.
And Carlisle's the same way. I mean, I guess you can kind of pick and choose and nitpick if you didn't want to see everything. But if your goal was to get around there and see everything, you need that weekend. That's for sure. And I dig that. Carlisle to me has become one of those events where, I'll go there every year and I reunite with some friends of mine that I may only see that once a year. And so that's a pretty cool deal. We'll go to people's, homes, or they'll have a party, or they'll, get to have a get together in a hotel parking lot. There's another pro tip,
Right.
Anytime that I'm sure it's not just our show, but any of the shows, when those shows are going around, you in the evenings, wow, you go around to all the parking lots at all the local hotels, and there's enough going on over there to keep you going all night long too.
You got it.
I love, the people are great. The personalities are fun. Mm-hmm. The cars are fantastic. And you know what, the other thing that I really like about it is the fact that there is a little bit of everything there. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, a lot of people, when they think of a car show like that, okay, they're going to think, yes, there's going to be some modern Mopar stuff there. you're going to see some Challengers, and you're going to see Hellcats and Demons, and you're going to see old school Barracudas, and you're going to see old Challengers and whatnot, and that's great. But you're also going to see oddball race cars, and you're going to see I'm 50 years old. I'm born in 1969, so I grew up a lot in my formative car guy years were very strong in the late 70s through the early 90s.
And we're on the same timeline, by the way.
Yeah, my man. I mean, those were not exactly high water marks for some of them.
I can tell you how many times my father swore under his breath as we were trying to climb a mountain in a Mercury Marquis station wagon. He would say, "This gutless blankety blank," So
you bet 100%. But that said, there has been a really good, a really good renaissance in what. Well, I mean, if you've ever seen, we call it the Radwood show. Radwood has got this great deal going on celebrating 80s and 90s cars, but we're starting to refer to those cars as Radwood era cars. And I'm thinking about things like a Dodge Omni GLHS.
Oh yeah,
it's such a cool car. I mean, so much turbocharged front wheel drive goodness. And whoever thought we'd be saying that at the same time? But I mean, it's such an oddball, unique car. I just love it. And then, so again, you'll appreciate this. The car that I learned how to drive a stick on, a manual transmission on, I learned how to drive a stick when I turned 16. My dad brought home a 1978 Plymouth Sapporo.
Wow. I don't even. I'm trying to visualize that car.
Right, and a lot of folks, they get that confused with like a Colt or one of the other Mitsubishi-based imports. And it was a Mitsubishi. It was essentially a Mitsubishi Galant that was rebadged. But Dodge also sold a version of that as the Dodge Challenger.
Oh.
And both of those cars, the Plymouth Sapporo and the Dodge Challenger, which were sold from 78 through 82 or 83.
Okay. I didn't realize they had a run that long, too.
Yeah. So they actually, you could get a couple of different engines, but the big motor, you ready for this? The big motor was a 2.6 liter, and I'm not making this up, Hemi.
Wow. Hemispherical heads on that thing.
Hemispherical heads. So here's one. This is one. This, if you want to know how I drink for free at the bar, this is how I do it. I go, all right, you guys, you got, and I'll tell them, you got to tell me how. Tell me the car that I learned how to drive a manual transmission on. It's front engine, rear wheel drive, 5-speed, Hemi powered, and they'll all look at me like I got 3 heads, and they'll start calling out old Hemi cars.
Right.
But none of those had 5 speeds in them. So, the 5-speed thing could be a giveaway, but we actually sold those cars. I say we, I didn't work for Dodge back then. I was a kid, but Dodge and Chrysler sold those cars with a badge on the side that said 2.6 Hemi right there on it.
Wow. That is so cool. That is right there, that price of admission for that factoid.
There you go. There, and now you know.
And now I can relate to what your wife would say at dinner. So.
100%, man. 100%.
Well, talk a little bit more too about just as you're going into a show. How does it work? Does Dodge give you spec sheets? Because I know you said you have just myriad of stats and specs and all. How do you kind of get that mind all ready to go? Because you said earlier you could be hit with a question from a really diehard know-it-all person.
Yep. Yeah. So the company wants us up to speed on all the modern products. And I make no bones about it. That is my area of expertise. Modern Mopar from about 06 on up. You'd be pretty hard pressed to stump me on something. However, my dad had a couple of Barracudas when I was a kid growing up, and of course, just being in Detroit, I've got my own knowledge in the back. I will also throw this out. I'm pretty darn good buddies with Steve Mignante, and Steve is a walking flipping encyclopedia of all things muscle car, but he really knows his old Mopars in a great way. So I've learned a lot from Steve, hanging out with him over the last, better part of a decade. So that part's really, really good. But I do, when there are new models coming out, every single year, I'm always studying up and learning new things so that I can tell the difference between, one model year to another, if there's a color change from one to another, if there's, I'll give a good example of this. A couple of years ago, you would be able to buy a Challenger or a Charger SRT with a 392 cubic inch Hemi in it, 485 horsepower.
Okay.
Well, last year, where are we now? In 2019, last year, they did away with the 392 SRT. So all SRT cars are now either Hellcats or Demons. I guess they weren't the Demons, so it was just Hellcats or now Hellcat Red Eyes at the time. A 392 car, you could only get that as a Scat Pack, but you could upfit a Scat Pack with all of the old SRT parts in it. So you could still get the adaptive damping suspension. You could still get the 6-piston brakes. You could still get the bigger wheels and tires on it. So you could essentially build the same car that was once labeled as an SRT 392, but you would get it as a Scat Pack with certain option packages on it. So it's kind of confusing, and it made sense. They actually did that to pare down all the different selections that were there, because it really was one of those things where you go to Dodge.com and you take a look at all the cars, and there's a gazillion different versions of a Challenger or a Charger you could buy, and which one was what. So that kind of helped pare things down to do it that way. But I know those different things, and So, but you got to stay up on it. There are not, generally speaking, within a model run, there aren't a lot of running changes from year to year. And that's not just in FCA. That's Ford and GM and even the imports are similar that way too. But when they do a big model changeover, there's a lot of extra learning. There's a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of behind the scenes work to do it. When you see me at Carlisle,
okay,
you're seeing the show. You're not seeing the preparation.
Okay.
And I liken it. It really is. It's just like putting on a show, right? When it's the old joke of you like to eat sausage, but you don't want to see it being made. Well, when you see me at Carlisle, you're eating my sausage. There you go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. But it really is. There's a lot of preparation, beforehand. So we're studying up on things. We're learning the product. We want to find out what's going on. And I'll be the first to tell you that, through my years in the industry, I have a lot of friends at headquarters, and I'll get the stories, the backstories from the guys and gals in engineering. And I really prefer doing that because, it's like any clown can stand up there in front of people and tell you it does 0 to 60 in 3 point blah, 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 blah seconds.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Well, all right, that's fine. But if you've got an engineer that can tell you a great backstory, mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden, now you've got something that's really truly engaging to your audience. Yeah. And I love that. It's like one of my favorite stories to tell is the exhaust. We were doing a show. We must have been doing the Roadkill show in August. We do that in Detroit every year, just before the Woodward Dream Cruise. And I had this guy who was he was ready to fight me, man. He did not believe that the cars that we were running on our thrill ride course were running factory exhaust. He was, what is it, man? Is that a Corsa, man? Is that a Borla, man? Come on, man. I'm like, it's stock. He goes, come on, man. Is that running their Zoomers, man? I'm like, dude, it's stock. It's factory exhaust.
Wow.
And the story behind the exhaust, though, is what really is fun. Because I can just, anybody else would just say, oh, that's a factory exhaust and blow the guy off. But the backstory is that I talked with Jim Wilder, who's the lead engineer on the Hellcat, and on to the Demon as well, for that matter. And Jim tells the story about the exhaust like this. He says, we knew that it was too loud. And we knew that when we went to the government to get it certified, because OEMs have to have their exhausts certified by the government. The government limits us to a certain decibel limit at a certain drive-by, and it has to be at that limit or below. You go over, you fail the test, you got to go back and re-engineer it. He says, so we knew we were too loud, but we figured that we'd figure out how over the limit we were, and we just dial it back and we go back a second time. There's no penalty for that. I said, all right, fair enough. He says, so we went to the test, and we did the test, and the guy says, okay, cool, you guys are all good to go. They passed the test.
How is
and
that?
He says, he says, we all looked at each other like, what the heck just happened here?
Right.
And he goes, he says to the guy, he goes, did you get the signature? I got the signature. Did you get the paperwork? I got the paperwork. And he says,
Hurry,
we looked at each other like a bunch of college guys that had just stolen a case of beer and ran out of the backside of the Quickie Mart, laughing all the way back. And so there you go. The exhaust on that car, on a Hellcat, is literally just at the absolute edge of what is legally allowed in the country.
Wow.
There you go.
That's an awesome story. Now, I got to tell you, too, just the whole Dodge Thrill Ride, for those that haven't done it, down on the autocross course, it is, I go every year. It's just so much fun. I mean, I think it's one of the best draws.
It is, and we've been doing it for a long time, and I'm kind of jaded because I've been doing this forever, and sometimes people will wait. I mean, holy cow, I've seen people wait an hour and a half or longer to go on a ride that's all of about 45 seconds long. And everybody gets out, and they're smiling, going, that's the best thing. And every year when I come, that's the first thing I'm going to go do. And, man, Hammer, I can't wait to come see you again. And you guys put on such a great show. I'm like, don't get me wrong, man. I'm thrilled they're coming back. But there are times that I'm sitting around going, man, it's 100 degrees out here. I don't know if I stand in line that long for it. But God bless them. I'm glad they do.
Yeah. Well, you guys bring how many sets of tires?
Oh, geez. That's, one of the craziest things. We talk about how we go through tires so quickly. And actually the course there at Carlisle is not as bad as some of the courses that we run on. Your blacktop is in really good shape there on that autocross course, on that pad there. And it's smooth, so we don't get an awful lot of tire wear. Okay. However, that said, generally speaking, we will blow through a set of rear tires while we're drifting these cars every 2 hours.
Oh, my. I can believe that, though.
Yeah. Sometimes we'll get a little bit more. Over there we might get 2.5, 245 maybe even out of a set of rears over there because it's pretty good. If the sun's not out, if it's cloudy, if it's a little bit cooler, we'll get better tire wear as well.
Sure.
We'll do. One of our worst events was at Barrett Jackson last year in Scottsdale.
Okay.
We did, earlier this year. That was, we only got a few events in this year before, the whole COVID deal. But the course that they put us on in years past had always been blacktop, and it was, our average regular, no big deal, 2.5 hours out of a set of tires. It just was what it was. Well, we got there this year, and they had resurfaced the parking lot. Now, if you've ever been out there to that facility or watched Barrett Jackson on television from Scottsdale, it's at a place called Westworld, which is a giant equestrian facility. And, for 355 days out of the year, they park horses and horse trailers on that parking lot that we drift in. So they put this aggregate down. It was this rocky aggregate stuff, and then it gets sprayed with like a tar almost on the top. Okay. Again, awesome. If a horse is going pee on it, it's perfect. If you're trying to drift a Hellcat, not so much. So I'll cut the chase here. The first day that we were there, our first sets of tires on the first day only made it 45 minutes before we went from brand new to sorted.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, you're basically on sandpaper.
Yeah, it really was. It was absolutely was. It's, you figure, and these tires aren't cheap. I mean, these are $500 a piece, retail price on these tires, and they're really expensive.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah, that's crazy. So yeah, that's true story. Scout's honor right there, man. True story.
I love it.
And again, there you go, Jen. Right, that's what we're talking about. It's like I could tell you the tires wear out in 2 hours, right. And that's a cool statistic. But the story is more fun to tell the stories.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just one of those things too where you just love to hear that. Like I remember, it's funny how certain stories stay with you. I remember a friend of mine from Texas. He said that he had a good buddy that worked as a mechanic for a Dodge dealership back then, and I forget where it was, near Irving or something. And he said the true little old lady from Pasadena came in with her coronet or something, and she kept saying how it was, it sounded like the heads were floating at high RPM, and she said she wanted it looked at and everything. So kept bringing it back, complaining 2 or 3 or 4 times, and finally, the lady, it's fine. She goes, no, you got to really push it to hear what I'm hearing. So I guess they took it out one afternoon on a light traffic day and got it up to like 110 or 115. And they said, well, we heard that, but we were pushing like 6,300, 6,500 at tacking out, and we were triple digits. And she said, that's what I'm talking about. So it's just a great story of like she was upset because she was running some serious speed and she wanted it to be running tight. So
that's awesome, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Mechanics have some of the best stories ever, though, because like I do most of I've got a road course car, and I do most of my own work on the car. But if I don't have time, or if I'm traveling for work, I've got a prep shop that's about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours away from me. But I'll drag it down there, and I'll let those guys do the prep work on it. And those guys, they'll tell some crazy stories about stuff that people have done or they didn't know or they attempted and they got into trouble. And what's the old joke about, the mechanic's hourly rate is, $75 an hour unless they're fixing something that you broke, then it's $95 an hour.
Right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah. No, it's a blast to have, and I have a couple buddies that run their own shop, and just what you get, the anecdotes and things, man, it shakes your head. You scratch and shake your head at the same time. Well, do you have?
You're gonna love this.
Go ahead.
So, well, I was gonna say, so I went looking for a car the other day, and I know we said here we talked that I make a good living with Dodge, but I'm a sucker for early Mustangs. I've always wanted a 64.5 through 66 Mustang.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
So every now and then, I'll see one, something will pop up on Facebook Marketplace or on Craigslist or whatever. And if it's close enough by, I'm like, I'll go take a peek at it. So I'm not making this up. And just this past Sunday on Mother's Day morning, I go to take a look at one. It's about 20 minutes from the house. And it looked really good in the pictures, right? I mean, the pictures are a little dark, but I mean, like, it looks pretty good. I'm like, I'll go take a peek at it. Mm-hmm. And the guy says, it's got no rust on it. All right. So I get there, and of course, what's the first thing through on the passenger door? Rust. I'm like, are you seriously? The paint job looked awful. It had sat underneath a tree for 20 years and hadn't moved. It was relatively solid, but anyway, this guy had started to do a bunch of work on it. He'd done some suspension work, some undercarriage work. Motor was running sweet, new exhaust on it, new fuel tank on it, things like that were really good. And he mentioned in an email between the two of us, he says there's what's the word that he used? A defect in the left rear quarter panel. I'm like,
okay,
all right. That's a weird word.
Is that synonymous with Bondo, or what does that mean? Yeah.
I'm like, all right, well, I'll be curious. And he didn't send me a picture of it. So I get there, and dude, this is crazy because from behind the wheel well, that entire lower chunk there, about the lower 12 or 14 inches of it, is wrinkled like crazy back there. What in the world? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's too low for somebody. It's not. There's no way somebody hit the car. It would have been much higher up, right? Uh-huh. And I looked at him. I'm like, what happened here? And he hung his head in shame, and he said, "It's my fault." What do you mean? He says, "You're not going to believe this." He says, I had put everything back together. He says, I'd run up to the dealership to buy a couple of parts for a different car, and I was leaving the dealership's right up the street, right? I mean, it's just right up the road. He says, and I left the dealership, and I turned onto the main road, and the wheel fell off.
Oh.
He didn't torque his lug nuts.
Oh.
The wheel fell off. He says the wheel went bouncing across the road, then hit another lady's car and bounced off into the woods. And he goes dragging the thing, until it ground to a halt on this. I'm like, you're kidding me, man. I'm impressed that he fessed up to it, because he could have said anything. He wouldn't have known any better,
Sure.
But yeah, oh yeah.
Wow.
Nope, drove it up, got the wheels on it.
Wow. Yeah, that's a bad day maker right there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, do you have a favorite story from your years of coming to Carlisle?
It has. It's got to be the hat story, I suppose.
Okay.
So this was about 5 years ago, and it was really hot. I mean, it was one of those excruciatingly hot weekends, close to 100 degrees and, 95% humidity kind of thing. And we were baking in the sunshine. And I'm not a big hat guy. I'm not much of a cap guy myself. I've got spiky hair. If you guys have ever seen me in person, I've got spiky hair. It's kind of part of my look, I guess. And so, it's just kind of there. Anyhow, one of the guys that I'm talking with in line, I've never met him before.
Okay.
Never met the guy before in my life.
Okay.
And he's chit-chatting with me, and he's like, I'm like, yeah, okay, great, yeah, cool. He goes for his ride, whatever. Half an hour later, I hear this from hey, John! And I look over to the side of our drifting area there, and he's over there. He waves me on over. I go on over. I'm like, hey, man. He goes, hey, ride was great. He says, I've had skin cancer. He goes, this is for you. And he hands me a hat. He went to one of the vendors on site and bought me a big wide-brimmed hat. I don't know what things cost. I mean, it's probably got to be a $20 hat.
Oh, my
God. I'm like, well, let me give you $20 for a vet. He goes, no. He comes back every single year and says hi to me now. And now I don't wear that hat anymore,
right.
But I actually do now have a different wide-brimmed hat that I wear pretty regularly on particularly hot days. But I'm telling you, it's all because of this guy talking about skin cancer and that first big straw hat that he gave me. It was really cool.
That is cool. Yeah, and you in his mind, he was doing a good thing, and you've got a great story and somebody that cared, and they wanted to make sure you were covered.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, absolutely. It was super cool, man. It was really great. And again, it's like every year, he comes by and says hi, and that's our joke right there. That's pretty neat.
I love it. All right. Well, next question that popped in my head is we've all driven them just that stupid fast, like I'm going to really hurt myself kind of ridiculous. And maybe it was the GTS or what have you, but what is the car that you will tell your grandkids, like, it pretty much scared me? What was that experience for you?
It would have been the first time that I ever drove a Hellcat.
Okay.
So the very first time that I ever drove a Hellcat, this is before it was even officially released, but we were doing Dodge used to have its own in-house driving school. It was called the SRT Track Experience.
Okay.
And that program traveled around the country. It ran for, I was actually the lead instructor of it for 9 years. So it was great. And we went from track to track. So we got to drive all the major tracks. Before we went on, you mentioned you've driven over at Watkins Glen. Love it. It's one of my favorites. We've been there before. But we were at Road America up in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. And Elkhart Lake, Road America is one of the fastest racetracks in this country. It is, I mean, the front stretch is super long. The run from turn 3 down to turn 5 is downhill. It's wide open throttle. I mean, it's fantastic. So when the Hellcat comes out, we're there, and Ralph Gilles, who was at the time was the president of Dodge, he's gone on to become now the global head of design for all of FCA. Ralph is there with his Viper. He's got a white Gen 5 Viper that at the time was pretty much brand new. His is a 13, it was first year for the Gen 5. So he's got that, and it was his track day car. But then he also brought his own Hellcat. So we do our event that day with all of our guests, our owners that came to do the day. And we're done at, 5-ish. Afterwards, he throws me the keys, goes, "You want to go out and play?" Like when Ralph, throws you the keys to his personal car, I'm like, "Yeah, let's go, man." Mm-hmm. And so I'm getting myself situated in the car. And of course, I've driven SRT 392s for years. I know the Challenger. I know the car well, but not with 707 horsepower. Yeah. I've driven some NASCAR style stock cars in my past, but even those were only at about 650, 675 horsepower. This is 707 horsepower. So I asked him, I said, "What am I getting myself into, Ralph? What's this thing going to drive like?" And he says, "It's just like a Challenger, only faster." Wow. I'm like, all right, okay, great, here we go. So we get out, we pull out on the track, and of course it's a Challenger Hellcat. Any Challenger that has a manual transmission it's a TR6060. It's the same transmission that the Viper has. So it feels very Viper-like. So I've got a lot of seat time in Gen 5 Vipers at this point, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. Right. The ratios are a little bit different, but it works the same way, so it's comfortable that way. So we get out on track. He's in his Viper, and I am in the Challenger Hellcat. So I let him go out, so I'm going to follow him. And so, his Viper is, he's going to handle the corners faster than I am anyway, no matter what. But I should be able to roll right up on him on the straightaways. And holy crap, I can. I mean, like, I have to lift out of the gas. We take this, because I'm running down his 206 mile an hour Viper. I'm catching him in this Challenger. He's got more top end, but we're not going top end, right? We're just accelerating. We're floating squirt off the corners. So we come around the first time by, we kind of take that first lap as a warm up lap, and it's 4 miles around. So as we come up the front stretch, it's like, okay, game on. He gives me the thumbs up. I give him thumbs up. It's game on. Let's roll. So we come flying up the front stretch there, and I mean, I'm doing 160 miles an hour in this car, and and there's more, and I'm lifting, right? There's more in the car, and so we play tag, and I stay right up his hiney, and we go sliding through corners a little bit, and I get my heel in toe. I mean, it's good, but I got to tell you, we're at about 3 laps in, I got cocky. Whoopsie! And I'm telling you, at the kink at Road America, the back. If you ever want to see something terrifying, go get on YouTube and find Catherine Legg's IndyCar crash at the kink.
Okay.
Terrifying. Legge. Catherine Legg. She drove an IndyCar for a few years. Okay. Horrifying. I thought I watched somebody die. She actually walked away from the wreck. It was horrifying. Wow. But I'm going through the kink, and I same thing. I carried a little too much speed, and I rolled off to the edge, and I just touched the edge at, triple-digit speeds. I'm like, I'm going to back her down a little bit, man. That one, biggest pucker factor I've ever had.
I was going to say, you pulled some of that upholstery up into your 100%,
yeah, for sure, yeah. Code Brown.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, I'm glad you were able to come away from it, but woof. Yeah, it could have been big. And at that right there, I mean, I took a big gasp. I don't think I took a breath for probably 3 or 4 corners after that one. I'm like, whoopsie, okay, back her down. Back her down, Clyde. That's great. That is great.
Yep.
Well, I want to, before we wrap, I definitely want to give a little promotion to what you're doing. I mean, for my listeners, go to thejohnhammer.com, and you'll see the spiky hair that John referenced there. But I mean, you've done a little bit of it all. I mean, like you said, from your broadcasting background, racing, precision driver. I know it's on your site, but hashtag let's talk cars. Take it away. I mean, talk a little bit about what you're doing right now with your video podcast and just whatever projects you want to promote.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I've got a couple things that are going on right now that are really cool. I've got again, staying with the Dodge theme, we are about to launch a brand new video podcast at DodgeGarage.com. DodgeGarage.com is Dodge's enthusiast magazine online, if you will. So it is owned by Dodge, but here's what's awesome about it. The folks at Dodge, they don't force me to be on message. I don't have to sit there and give you some corporate line. It is legitimate. When we write a story, we can, I've written a story about a guy restoring a 71 Challenger who got his start restoring cars on a Chevelle. And they didn't care. They left it in, because that's real. That's what car guys and gals do.
That's right.
So we're launching any day now. I think we're within probably a week or two of getting that video podcast launched. We're going to do a couple a month, I think, is the plan. I've got several actually already pre-recorded and edited. We're just waiting to get everything all lined up. But it's called the Dodge Garage Download, and we're going to feature owners and enthusiasts and celebrities and into their garages. Coming up on one, I've got a gal who actually does stage rally in a Dodge Caliber SRT4. She goes over 100 miles an hour through the woods in dirt in a car that she likes to say is constantly trying to kill me because it's front-wheel drive and has way too much boost. It's really cool. So that's coming up. So you can go to DodgeGarage.com. And, of course, I've been writing stories for that website for a couple of years now, so you can always find stuff there. I also host something called The Driving Show. The Driving Show was a nationally syndicated radio show for several years. I've turned that into a podcast and now a video podcast as well. And so it's similar to the whole Dodge idea, right? But that one I don't have to be Dodge specific. So, I mentioned earlier, before we went on, I'm an old Corvair guy. If I want to do a show on Corvairs, or if I want to talk about, safety, or if I want to talk about motorcycles, or we can talk about all that kind of stuff over at The Driving Show, which is on Instagram at The Driving Show. Let's see what else is going on here. That's big. I still do some road racing, although all that stuff's been kind of, put on hold for the time being with the whole virus deal. But I mentioned earlier, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am excited that NASCAR comes back, this coming weekend over at Darlington, and then over at Charlotte Motor Speedway after that. Admittedly, no fans in the stands, but I could, in theory, go drive past the Speedway if I want to, and
sure.
and get a hearing of that stuff. But all that stuff, we talk about it on my social channels. I mean, really the easiest thing to do, come find me on Instagram, The John Hammer, TheJohnHammer, on Instagram and on Facebook at The John Hammer, Instagram or Facebook. Either way, that's really the easiest way to come find me.
Awesome. All right. Well, I encourage all of my listeners to check all that out. And John, like I say with all of my guests, it's instant friendship, and looking forward to meeting in the future. And I know we'll probably have to do elbow bumps versus handshakes in the future, but definitely if I'm down your way, or when next time you're back up, obviously, I mean, I'll be at each of the shows this season, depending on what we can do. And Mike Garland's keeping that schedule out there on CarlisleEvents.com. So everybody, you want to come to Chrysler Nationals or whatever show, keep an eye to that as well.
Dude, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've always wanted to come to the Kit Car Nationals because I love oddball cars.
Oh yeah,
love oddball cars, and I know that show is packed with oddball cars, and I need to get there one of these days for that.
I would love to have you. Just come on up, because the import show is so much fun. I mean, I know this sounds so, it's the inner child in me, but every year when I get my program going into Gate 3, they've got the passport program, and you go to each of the countries. They've got the flags, so you go to Germany, you go to France, you go to Japan, and U.S. and they have a model there in the tent. You get your passport stamped. You can go to so you can go check out a Peugeot. You can go check out. You just go from country to country, and it's really well done.
That's cool. That's very cool. I'm all for it, man. I like to refer to some of those cars as orphan cars.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have you'll appreciate this, then I bet you somebody has shown up with one. I've had a couple of Saab 900s in my past.
Oh, I had
including.
I had a 9000S, and I loved it.
Did you? Well, you'll appreciate this then. I had a 900 SPG.
Oh my gosh, that's rare.
Really rare. I mean, they imported them for 5 years and only brought 6,000 into the country total. And I had one, and it was awesome, man. It was a great car. I drove it for several years, blew the turbo up, and I sold it for more than I bought it for with a blown turbo.
Wow, that is very.
It's cool. It's cool. Car guys, man, we're nerdy like that.
Yeah, we are. We absolutely are. Well, I'll give you the final turn behind the wheel. Anything you want to close the show with?
You know what? I'd like to remind everybody to be smart and be safe out there on the road. I do see. I was just talking with my son. Actually, he's 13 years old, and he was in the car with me the other day, and we saw some stupidity in front of us. And I said, it's like I want so badly to just, and I can't believe I haven't done it yet. I got to put some video cameras in my car, some driving cameras in there, some dash cams, because the amount of stupidity is crazy. Mm-hmm. Don't make high risk and low return moves. It's not that imperative to get to the next stoplight.
Right.
So take the time, be smart out there, keep your eyes open for other people. I also ride motorcycles. Always keep an eye out for bikes, and just use your brain, guys. I'm a huge fan of taking it to the track. Whether you're a drag racer, you're autocrossing, you're road course guys, I don't care what you are. Yep. Take it to the track. Don't do that stuff on the street.
Yep, good point. In fact, at lunchtime, I was out on my road bike, and it seems like every time I'm out and running some country roads, without fail, there's a pickup truck chrome mirror that almost takes off my elbow and not giving me that 4-foot berth kind of thing. So yeah, I understand, and I have my motorcycle license, and it tell you what, I think anybody that has a motorcycle or license or rides, it makes you a better driver because you are appreciative and cognizant of everybody out there.
100%. In fact, I've said it before. I think that everybody who drives a car should go out in traffic on a motorcycle once, mm-hmm. because it will scare the crap out of you, mm-hmm. and you will never look at motorcycles the same way again.
No, you don't.
I've never felt more vulnerable than that very first time I took my maiden voyage on a motorcycle out. When I was learning, I'd roll through the neighborhood a little bit, but when I went out onto an actual road in traffic for that first time, that was, dare I say, that was as scary as my incident in the Hellcat.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
There's pucker power on both sides.
Faux show, man. Faux show.
Well, John, thank you so much for giving a big chunk of your afternoon this Wednesday. I really appreciate it, man. Can't wait to stay in touch with you.
My pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
All right, bud. Take care. Hello and welcome back to Studio A. Would like to express my sincerest appreciation to John Hammer for his interview, and certainly for being a new friend to the Cars of Carlisle network. Before we put it in park, I do owe you the answer to this week's trivia question. And if you recall, earlier in the show, I had asked what were the full names of the legendary Dodge brothers. Well, this answer, and thanks to some research through Wikipedia, the Dodge brothers were Horace Elgin Dodge and John Francis Dodge. And in the early 1900s, they had created or founded the Dodge Brothers Company, which was essentially a parts supplier for Detroit-based automakers. And they they did start with building complete cars under the Dodge Brothers brand. And that came about in the year 1914, all of which predated what we know to have been the Chrysler Corporation. Now, famous town in Michigan, Hamtramck, that's where the Dodge main factory was, and that was really up until, starting in 1910 all the way up until winter of 1980 when it did close. And in light of what's been happening in the world with the pandemic, it's quite a parallel to note that the Dodge brothers, both of them actually, passed away in the year 1920 from the Spanish flu. So that is this week's trivia answer. So before we, again, turn that ignition off for this week's show, I want to say thank you again to all of you for listening week after week. You are what make this podcast, make this show. Thank you so much for sharing, subscribing, rating, reviewing, giving us 5 stars, letting your car club friends, whomever is in your circle of influence that you hang out with, thank you for letting them know about this Car to Carlisle podcast. The more people that listen, the greater the ratings, the better we do, and the more we can offer to each of you in the way of expanded content. So you help drive that, and thank you so much. Definitely can't wait to have you come back. Join us next week. And for now, I'll say, my friends, drive well, be well, take care.